Good morning and welcome. And my name is Sam. I'm a nutritional therapist, and it's my aim to help women in their mid-years get through the perimenopause and menopause into their older years as easily and healthily as possible. And so I've been talking about various things over the past, I think it's a year now. And one area I want to go into in more detail, which I'll probably do over a few weeks, is bone density. This is Luna come to join me. She does like to get involved, don't you? Yeah. So yes, I think bone density or low bone density, I'm referring to osteoporosis and osteopenia, which is the forerunner of osteoporosis. Do you mind not making those disgusting noises whilst I'm talking? Thank you, sweetie. Sorry if you heard her slapping sounds. Yes, now, osteoporosis is one of those things that you don't know necessarily you have. It's, you might break a bone and then you have a DEXA scan and they say, yes, you've got osteoporosis. So it's one of those things that creeps up on us. And it's very prevalent in older people in general. Men have increased, or there's been an increase in men as well as women. But for women, it's often recognised post-menopause. So if we have a diagnosis of osteoporosis, this can be quite a burden on our overall health. It means we have to reconsider some of the lifestyle factors we might currently enjoy. We may have to change things because the statistics around a fall and a broken hip are really very poor for life expectancy, and for many over 60, they may have less than a year if they break a hip. So it's really impactful. So it's an important part of our, I think, focus as we get older. And really, if we can start focusing on our bone health earlier in our lives, even in our 20s, which is when we see a decline. So just to give a bit of background, our bones break down and rebuild throughout our lives, and there's a lot of rebuilding going on when we're children because we grow, so the bones grow, so we have more building than breakdown. When we get to our sort of mid-20s, it kind of balances out and we might see more breakdown than building, and that might be partly due to our Western style of living where we're not as active as our ancestors were. But and our diets have been impacted, of course, with a lot of modernisation. So there's a lot of things that have come into play here. But yes, our bones can rebuild, and they can rebuild at any age. They continually break down and rebuild. Like our skin continually sloughs off, we get new skin. The same happens with our bone, obviously, inside our bodies. And I think a lot of people don't realise that. So we can have a influence on our bones and their ability to rebuild. So it's not all downhill, as some people might believe. There are things you can do. There is prevention, but there's also, we're going to get on to what we can do to support bone health and building. And it may be slightly different to that which you may have heard before, because the emphasis has been, let's say calcium's been overemphasised. It's important, but it's not alone in bone health. It definitely needs its mates to make it all work. So today I want to talk a little bit about some of the things we can be doing for prevention. If you already have a diagnosis of osteoporosis or osteopenia, then I would say, have a word with your doctor before you make any changes. Particularly when it comes to exercise, and that's the first thing I want to point out for prevention. Exercise is particularly good, particularly weight bearing, and for many people they're already going to the gym, they're already doing some weights, which is excellent, but sort of resistive exercise like yoga and Pilates, where you're holding your own weight, can also be of benefit, but it does seem that weights have the edge. Now, if you haven't done any exercise before, and I will talk about exercise in more detail another week, please don't just dive in. You need to start any change you make needs to be steady and gentle, so your body doesn't become overburdened. Your body understands that changes are being made and it can adapt more easily, particularly if we're more cautious with changes. So that's number one, prevention. Some medications can impact bone health. So have a word with your doctor. If you're on medications, there are some that indeed can deplete our bones of minerals. So have a word with your doctor. If you're on any medication and you're at midlife, have a little review with your doctor. Will this impact me? And it's not so much that you want another medication to counter that, because they do have a tendency to prescribe something else, but have an awareness so you know what you're dealing with. So that's number two, medications can be an issue. Nutrition, poor nutrition. So we need to look at targeted nutrition, and that's definitely an area I'm going to go into in greater detail. I'd say that'll be next week. I think it's a fairly straightforward area that we can do something about fairly easily. I believe changing one's diet can be very tricky for some people. I'm not denying that. We've talked about declining estrogen. So again, if you've got concerns, have a word with your doctor. HRT might be an option for you. I'm not a doctor, so I can't advise on that, but it's something to consider. It's the one area I feel I've been through the menopause with relative ease, but I do not know what my bone density is. I haven't had a DEXA scan. I've never taken HRT, and that can, according to the research, can be beneficial to help protect bone density. So that's one area where I think maybe I should have or could consider HRT should I require support for bone density. So I need to look into my own personal details there. Then areas which could come under nutrition and lifestyle. Smoking is really not helpful when it comes to bone density. It is related to low bone density, and drinking heavily also can deplete our bones. And I would say as well, for today, I'd say if you are a smoker or a heavy drinker, please start looking at reducing that. Do it gradually so that you will do it. I think sometimes, if you're good at cold turkey, then go ahead. But most people I find are much better with a gradual decline, and they find it more sustainable, or something life-changing sometimes helps people to make a decision and keep to it. So my other little tip for today for change is nutritional. If you eat a lot of processed foods, start swapping out processed for something more natural that's easy. I will go into detail on this next week. I'm pretty sure I'll do it next week, because the food is my bag, so to speak. And fizzy drinks, they are notorious for binding with minerals in our body. Could be with the meal we've just eaten, could be taking it out of our body. And basically, if some of these additives in these foods bind to our minerals, then we will pee or poo it out, and we don't get the benefit. So that's particularly important. So if you are a keen fizzy drinker, at least swap to natural carbonated water. When I did a little bit of reading around that quite a long time ago, actually, I couldn't find that there was any relationship between naturally carbonated water and reduction in bone mineral density. I haven't looked at the latest, so I will endeavour to do that. But try and move off fizzy drinks. They're not really giving you anything, and they are fairly addictive. So that's my little tip for today. Look at those preventions and think about what you're doing. Are you getting exercise? Is it weight bearing? Do you need to get advice before you start anything? And start thinking about what are those issues and preventative measures you could put in place. And I think that's a good place to start. And so next week I'm going to talk about nutrition. I want to talk about exercise in a separate one, and then I'll go into the other sort of areas. I'll pull them in as well, because I don't want it to be a long-winded series. I want it to be impactful with useful, usable information for you, things that you can do. So that's my short message for this week, and I look forward to going through nutrition to help support our bone density with you next week. And from Luna and Molly, who's down there, and me, thank you very much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye. Say goodbye. You love it on camera, don't you? You love it. We ought to have the Luna show. Should we have the Luna show? Shall we?